Welcome everyone to Njord's live event on how shipowners can stay ahead of the green transition using technology. I'm Derek Snell from Partner Experience here at Njord.
And my name is Caroline, and I do customer relations at Njord.
We are so much looking forward to spending the next 40 minutes or so with you all, and we hope to help steer your businesses towards a greener future by sharing our experiences working with and implementing energy-saving devices in Maersk and through Njord. Again, we encourage you to send any questions as they arise via the chat feature over the duration of the live event, and Caroline will kindly read through these towards the end of the event for the two speakers to respond to. So thanks again for spending this hour with us. We understand you are all very busy and that you can be anywhere right now, so we're extremely happy to have you have decided to join us and spend this time with us. And we're definitely motivated to deliver insights and give you actionables that you can implement in your businesses to derive real value today. So first off, we'll talk a little bit about our two speakers here. So first we have Frederick Pind, who is the Managing Director of Njord with over 10 years experience in the maritime industry. Prior to becoming the managing director at Njord, Frederick held different leadership positions in Maersk Tankers, such as Chief Procurement Officer, and more recently as the head of decarbonisation. Frederick enjoys spending quality time with the family at his summer house in warm, sunny southern Denmark, and he loves his 80s pop music. And then we have Steen, who is the technical director of Njord with over 30 years experience in the maritime industry. He has had roles such as the head of fleet technology and the head of cost leadership and fuel optimization, where he has been responsible for driving results through innovation in areas of fuel efficiency, new building supervision, and retrofits, and among others as well. Steen loves to cook and has a passion for swimming, especially of the Viking variety. So the colder the water, the better for Steen. So let's jump into the agenda here. We have a jam-packed, chock full of insights agenda where both Frederick and Steen will ping-pong some of the following topics. So Frederick will kick things off and put everything into perspective. He'll speak about Njord, who we are, our background, and why we're doing what we're doing. He'll highlight also why technology has a merit in decarbonization, and he'll also be giving some concrete examples of a cash-driven business case. Talk about CII and the impact of vessel value and charter rates, and also charterers' selection criteria and how to make vessels commercially attractive. Then we'll jump over to Steen, who will go into and dive into the technologies and combining these. He'll also talk about the complex landscape of the suppliers and assessing technologies. He'll also go a little bit into the novel and new technologies and also talk about the secret sauce, the hidden potential of combining technologies. And lastly, we'll switch back over to Frederick to talk a little bit about getting it all done. So he'll speak to the misconceptions on energy-saving devices, the EU ETS and CII. He'll also jump into financing and the business case of ESDs, and also give you some actual tips on getting ahead of the game. Lastly, then we'll be jumping into a Q&A and looking forward to an engaging session here, again, with this intimate audience. And hopefully we can deep dive into some serious questions. So without further ado, I will now be opening the floor up to Frederick to jump in.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Derek. Thanks for the introduction, Derek and Caroline. My name is Frederick Pind. I'm the Managing Director of Njord. And again, a big thanks to people who have decided to dial into the call today. We're very excited to be hosting this webinar for all of you. So the first thing that we'll just jump into is Njord and who we are. And as stated here, what better to explain it than our ambition statement of accelerating greenhouse gas reductions in shipping through green technology. That's what we are all about. The concept of Njord was defined by three industry leaders in end of 2019, Maersk Tankers, Mitsui, and Cargill. And the concept came about through discussions of good practice with technologies, how to stay ahead, what to apply, what works, what doesn't work, but also with the reflection on what if there was a vehicle out there, a business partner for all owners and charters to help them on their journey, to share the learnings and help them deploy the best suited technologies on their vessels accordingly. And that's out of that discussion that Njord was born. Flash forward to today. Njord is now a business hosted by Maersk Tankers, where we have worked with more than 50 external owners and charters, looking at the opportunities of technologies for their vessels, screening, designing, and installing packages of technologies. And it is through that work that we have gained a lot of insights, a lot of learnings, a lot of experience that we would like to bring to the audience today to talk about how you can stay ahead of the green transition using technology. So that's us and where we're coming from. And then first off, I would like to talk a bit about why technology matters in the green transition. What you see here is a graph based on a study done by the Maersk Mc-Kinney Møller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping and McKinsey. The graph basically shows us the way to zero emissions if we are to reach zero emissions by 2050. And it also shows us what are the efforts required. Now, the first thing which is relevant to take notice of in this graph is that it's actually going to come through approximately a 50% effort between efficiencies and the new green fuels of tomorrow. That's one important thing to take notice of. From our perspective in Njord, we believe that there's a lot of talk around the new fuels, which one will work, which won't, testing them, building new vessels, catering for those new fuels, which is really important and relevant. But we also believe that a lot of the talks needs to be around, so what do we do on efficiencies and how can we improve efficiencies for the current fleet and the coming fleet? What you can see from this graph is also that it actually takes merit both in the initial stages where it's all about efficiencies before we'll see those new vessels catering for the new fuels arriving, but equally over the time as we see the new fuels being introduced, then it's important to keep up your game on efficiencies. Efficiencies comes both from voyage optimization and vessel optimization, and it's specifically on vessel optimization and technologies, energy-saving devices, that we have our focus area for Njord. So according to this, basically, you need to already now start to deploy efficiency technologies and also for the long run, keep exploring them. So investing in ESDs will be a pathway to zero. We've also now seen the introduction of the EU ETS, meaning there is now a price tag on carbon in certain areas of the world, which makes the business case even more attractive to invest in ESDs. And what we can share as the last element is that we have now worked on more than 150 vessels in Njord, and we can just say that there has not been one single vessel where we've not been able to find areas of opportunities to improve the efficiency on the vessels. So there is quite a big savings potential out there today. So that is key to take notice before we jump into the different misconceptions that we have then come across. And that's the second element that I would like to touch upon, because getting these misconceptions right is key to assess how to then stay ahead in the transition in front of us. Through our conversations with the different owners and charters, we've come across with these and also broken those down to ensure that we get the understanding right. The first one is I can only deploy ESDs in my dry docks. And that's the first misconception. And here I can tell you that out of the more than 30 different technologies that we work with in Njord, it's very, very few that requires a dry dock to be applied. Actually, majority of them can be and are currently being deployed while vessels are in operations. So there is no need to wait until a dry dock. On the contrary, actually, because popularity of energy-saving devices is picking up rapidly, we see that lead times are also picking up in the same way, meaning that some technologies actually have more than a year's lead time from when you decide, order, and have it ready. So there's a risk associated also in waiting until the vessel is going to dry dock, and at the same time, there's no need because you can actually deploy them already here and now today. The second misconception that we've come across is that improving the CII has no value. common misconception here. And this is quite interesting. What we like to say is that even though the CII is debatable, then it is in fact relatable. It's relatable to an owner, it's relatable to a charter, and it's also relatable to an end customer. And as a consequence, it's beginning to ease in the selection criteria for charters when they select new vessels for longer term charters. They do that to stay prepared because it might be that the regulation will firm up, the calculation methodology would change, and there could be introduced a commercial incentive on the CII ratings going forward. So that's one of the very concrete examples we've seen where CII ratings is in fact a selection criteria now for charters or for some charters. In addition to that, we've also seen that a recent study conducted by Vessel Value shows that a vessel with a rating of CII of A versus a similar vessel with a CII rating of C, that A-rated vessel actually have a premium resale value against the vessel rated as a C. So very concretely, there's also a resale value upside for the vessel accordingly. Then we see a misconception around the ESDs having a minimal impact. And what we have found so far is that that might be the case for some ESDs, but the beauty is actually when you start combining a multitude of technologies. And Steen, he will talk much more about that in a minute to show you some good cases of that. But we've seen that it might be that one technology has a very incremental value to bring to the table. But if you combine a multitude, then you can actually hit double-digit savings figures, and then it becomes really valuable to ship owners. I can afford to wait and see is one misconception we've heard as well. Here again, I would highlight the fact that as we've already talked about, the improving the CII value actually has a concrete value. You should be careful of waiting too long because lead times are quite long at the moment. And at the same time, this is also a way for you to stay competitive. The most cases we've seen in terms of deploying a multitude of technologies actually have very short payback times. So instead of waiting and seeing, why not take the benefit of deploying them and then staying ahead in terms of competition? And then the last misconception we've come across is that there are no financing options out there. And here, quite interesting, we've seen a number of new financial vehicles, financial institutes popping up, focusing solely on retrofit solutions, both in the terms of traditional financing, but also in terms of leasing models, similar as we saw for ballast water treatment and scrubbers. So these solutions actually exist out there today. We'll also later in the webinar come back to how you can potentially agree on a financing model together with a charter in the event that you TC out your vessel. So they exist, and it is a misconception that they don't. So those are some of the misconceptions we've come across in the market, and it's important to get these right for the rest of the webinar to make sense and for harvest these good points around how to stay ahead in the green transition through technology. And speaking of technology, then I'll have the honors to hand it over to Steen to deep dive on that topic. Steen.
Yeah, thank you, Frederick. As mentioned, I'll be talking about green technologies and also some of the complexity around selecting these and not to mention applying them on board. So I've also been asked to keep it short, so I will try to do that. There's a lot of technologies out there. And we at Njord, we work with more than 30 different ESDs and upgrade solutions. And they range from the more basic technology like LED lights, variable frequency drives, various propeller anti-fouling solutions like silicon coating, graphene coating, or ultrasonic device. We work over hull enhancement technologies. That could be flow ducts, propeller bus, cap fins, bow modifications, and of course, selecting the right anti-fouling systems. We also work more internally on the engines. We can do derating, propeller reblading, or propeller renewal, particularly if the EPL has reduced the main engine load dramatically. That can be a very good business case in that. So to have both more performance monitoring capabilities, but also to validate technologies, we also do full auto logging, including any required sensors that are missing on board. So apart from these more known technologies that we work with. We also, as Derek mentioned, work with the more novel technologies. So that's air lubrication systems, is wind-assisted propulsion systems, fixed wings, rotor sails, PTOs, front end on shafts, and even onboard carbon capture systems. So it's a wide range of technologies, and if that is not complex enough, there is multiple suppliers to select from, and they have different payback times, lead times, preferred locations. So it can be quite challenging to find the right package. So how do we do that in Njord, and how do we work with it? First, we create a virtual model of the vessel that we are looking at, and then we add the operational profile into that model, and then we start applying technologies that we find are relevant and test it out within the model to see what are the benefits and how do they work together, because that's where the magic happens, is the combination of the technologies. Yeah, we generally end up with approximately 9 technologies per vessel, and an average saving percentage of 7 to 16%. And this is, it can go as high as 28% we've had, but that's including the novel technologies. And yeah, so it's all depending on the actual vessel and also the operational profile. A couple of examples are shown here on the slide. We have a bulk carrier, medium-sized. We added 10 technologies, and we achieved 18.4% savings with a 1-year payback time. I like to mention here, this is last year's fuel cost, so it's slightly longer today, but still a very attractive business case. Another bulk carrier, a larger one, 8 technologies were found for this particular vessel with 11.8% saving. And again, a 1-year payback time, so super attractive. We also worked on container vessels, in this case, 112,000 tonner. We found 7 technologies with very close to 12% fuel savings and 1.5-year payback time. So super attractive. And in these cases, we actually achieved 1 band jump on CII and even 2 bands sometimes. We really see the complexity, just to deep dive into the nerdiness of it. When we are working with the novel technologies like air lubrication systems and rotor sails, not only do you need power to run these, and you might need more power than you can generate from one generator. So how do you deal with that? How much can you reduce to open up for that power requirement, or should you fit a PTO? And if you fit a PTO with technologies that actually lower the RPM demand for the engine, will you then actually be able to pull that power out of the engine? So it gets really interesting and fun to work with. But it's to be noted that there's a lot of moving parts in designing these packages, and it's important to do it in the right way, for sure. And to stay ahead, as the headline is for this webinar, we also run an accelerator so we can stay sharp on the future technologies and can be part of the implementing them into the industry. And there we help pilot these technologies together with suppliers, and we work as knowledge partners and validators. And that way we can quicker bring to market for the benefit of all. So I think that was my time. Back to Frederick.
Yeah, thanks, Steen, and thanks for sharing those great examples. So I hope it was clear to the audience that there is some real value to actually harvest out there today. And I like really the very concreteness of the case of saying you can achieve double-digit savings, and the paybacks are in my opinion quite quick. So there is real value here to aim for. But what we need to talk about is then how do you get it done? What are then the tips and tricks of actually implementing it and getting it out there? Because we have identified a number of barriers through the different conversations. And once you've got your misconceptions right, then how can you then remove those final barriers, start implementing, and then staying ahead? And what we have found is that it starts, and it might sound simple, but in reality, it's also kind of complex to do. But it starts with what we would like to say is an enhanced and complete business case. You need to take a deep dive look at your fleets and also the individual vessels, and then line up the different technologies that you would like to put on the vessels. Remembering that you will achieve the best result when you start combining a multitude of technologies. When you combine a multitude of technologies, then you will first of all see higher savings in general. So it becomes very concrete and it becomes measurable as well. So combining them is the right way forward. But also when you combine, let's say, a technology which has a high payback time with a technology that has a low payback time, or even a multitude of low payback time technologies, then you will reach an average payback time, which is suddenly quite attractive. So you can actually help offset some of the more expensive long-term technologies with some of the more short-term technologies. And that calculation and overview is quite relevant to do. In addition to that, then when you start ramping up the capex investment, that's typically also where you attract some of the external financiers and makes it an interesting investment case for them as well. And then lastly, combining a multitude of technologies, as we've just seen, will also help you instead of just a 1 or 2% improvement. When you start looking at 9, 10, or even beyond 10%, then that's also where you start jumping the CII bands. And that's where you see a multitude of value adds coming as a consequence of that. So line up what is the current CII projection of the vessel. And if I deploy this package of technologies, how will I then jump over the years to come and have that overview straight? In addition to those elements in your business case, it's also quite important to calculate the EU ETS impact. I'm sure all owners, they have now started to report on the EU MRV data, and adding that into the case to see what does it do for me financially to deploy these technologies is also a crucial element to have part in this enhanced and complete business case. Then consider, instead of waiting until the next dry dock, what can I do now to start having or seeing these effects versus what will have to wait until the dry dock takes place. Get the data to confirm the technology effect. Here, it's super good practice either to get data shared by the suppliers you're working with or with peer owners. In Njord, we work with the data sets of the many years of working with efficiencies on Maersk vessels. So that's typically also a very strong reference point. But this helps create transparency in the effect and also trust in the effect of these technologies that you are considering to deploy. And then confirm the lead times and plan ahead so you don't miss a window of opportunity when it comes to deploying these technologies. So that's a lot of elements to deploy into one overview, one enhanced and complete business case. But it is relevant and it is necessary because once you get there, then you unlock both value and opportunities to actually get it done. The first thing is taking such a business case to a charter will create and make the discussion with the charter much more tangible and will unlock the discussion around, can we extend a charter? Can we change the TC rate? Can we consider whether the charter would actually participate in the capex investment because the charter will get the upside? What is the upside? We have that in the business case. Who gets what, etc. So when everything is lined up, that discussion is much easier to have. It's something that we also, again, in Njord have been part of many times, also to help assist in that discussion. But having all those elements ready for such a discussion makes it much more fruitful. In addition to that, taking that sort of business case to some of the alternative financing vehicles or the new financing vehicles out there today is typically also very useful and makes it much more easier to get to yes. And once you've gotten to that point and once you start implementing, that's then where there are some triple effects and add-on spillover effects in deploying these technologies. So first off, if you, for instance, trade the vessel on spot, if you made a good agreement with the charter, then you will be able to improve the earnings of the vessel. Because deploying those and seeing the savings will have obviously a spillover effect, especially if you front the fuel bill yourself. In addition to that, I mentioned before that it also have a triple-on effect on your vessel value or the vessel resale value. I mentioned the study done recently by Vessel Value, where they have looked at that a vessel rated with a CI rating of an A versus the same vessel with a CI rating of C has a premium resale value. The study actually shows that that's a plus 7%. Vice versa, a vessel rated with an E versus the same vessel rated as a C has a negative resale value of 12%. So it's quite relevant to stay ahead here and to jump those bands through the technologies, and you'll see that effect. And then lastly, it's actually where we started. This will allow you to start measuring the effect quite rigorously on the technologies you deploy, and also scale them across the fleet, while also staying ready for when you have these new vessels coming in, trading on these new green fuels, which will be more expensive, which will have a different density where the supply-demand ratio might be off. Then you are able to stay ahead because you have already deployed efficiency technologies in the past. You've harvested the learnings and you know what works for the future to stay ahead on that curve as well. So it starts with an enhanced and complete business case. Getting all those elements into it might be complex, but it will unlock both the discussion, getting to implementation, and these spillover effects accordingly. So that was all from my side, and then I'll hand it back over to Derek and Caroline. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Frederick. Thank you, Steen. That was that was great. Now, I believe we're going to jump into the question period here. So if you do have any questions, please send them away and send them through. And do we have any?
We already have a few, so
Okay.
let's just jump right in.
Okay, great.
We have a great one here. We don't pay for the fuel. How can we convince the charterer to invest in this?
And it goes very much back to the last slide here. So we have seen that if you line up this business case and you hold against this is the capex investment, this is the operational pattern of the vessel currently, these are the fuel cost or projection future fuel cost, then it's quite easy for you to see when you actually have a return on the investment and when the value lands. Hold that up against the TC period of the vessel, and then have a very good discussion with the charter. We have at least experienced through the discussions that we have taken part of and the ones that we have helped resolve between owners and charters, that this type of information unlocks that kind of discussion. And there's a willingness for the charter to partake in the capex investment, if not taking the full capex investment, because the payback period will be within the current TC period. So I hope that's an answer to that question.
Yeah, we have another one here. One is asking if the technologies are only hardware or if there's also software technologies we can install.
So we work with both. There's a lot of software technologies out there as well. It can be for trim optimization. It can be upgrade of adaptive steering software. It can be main engine power optimization. So you control main engine by power instead of RPM. So yeah, both software and hardware.
And we have another one here. How much will installing ESDs affect the CII rating of our vessels?
Depending on the vessel starting point. So you will have to do a proper vessel screening to evaluate that, but normally we can move it up 1 to 2 bands.
Yeah, and I think on this question specifically, the beauty of it is that once you have modeled the entire vessel and you've applied those technologies virtually, then you can deploy the past trading setup of the vessel to see what would it look like on last year's operational pattern, or you can also model a future pattern. And typically, if it's a dialogue between the owner and the charter will have an idea around how they intend to trade the vessel next year. And then you can make different scenarios to see what will that do to the CII rating. But it all comes down to modeling the package first, basically.
Okay, we have another one. One is asking whether the various solutions offered is having an additional effect, or the final effect will be a bit lower than the added effect of each item.
Yeah, that's a good question. Normally, these technologies eat a little bit from each other. So an example, if we look at the hull enhancements, if you apply a very slick coating, then you reduce your fuel consumption baseline, so to speak. So when you add a flow duct on that, the percentage saving will still be the same, but of a lower uh, fuel amount. So when you target the same consumer, then they 1 + 1 is not 2.
But I think it's also relevant here to share maybe that we've also seen examples where, for instance, propeller enhancements, that they can actually complement each other, right, Steen?
But that is true. That is true. And we have other technologies that support each other, like ultrasonic cleaning of a seawater cooler together with VFD on the seawater pumps. They also kind of support each other. But in general, you have to be careful and consider the combined effects.
All right, very good. We have another one. What is the average investment and ROI for a technology/ESD package?
That's again a difficult question, but overall average, I would say around $700,000-800,000 and a payback time of around 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years.
You can always add more technology to the table, right? And then it might not be worth it in terms of the payback time or the effect of that technology. But again, back to having this enhanced and complete business case. Once you've modeled the whole thing, then going to a financier or looking at it for internal approval or going to a charter, then you can start defining what are your selection criteria. Are you looking for a package that has a payback time less than 2 years? Do you have a maximum capex investment that you're willing to put on the table for, say, let's say 700,000? Then having the whole thing modeled out, then you can start to twist and turn the technologies you have selected for the package to match those criteria, whether it's investment criteria or timing criteria, etc., that you've set up for yourself.
Do you see any trends in new and upcoming ESDs?
Generally, a lot of the existing technologies are being further developed, so they become more and more efficient. And that's because there's a bigger uptake now, more interest, so they improve. New technologies like wind-assisted propulsion is also taking off, so fixed wing sail and optimization of rotor sail systems is also picking up. And then we have the carbon capture systems, where there's a multitude of different, say, types of applications being developed and piloted, and even full finished installed on board.
I think what's interesting also to add here is that might be the case, and there are new trends. But I mean, majority still on the vessels that we work with and the owners we work with, we still find that some of those good old technologies that have been around for 10 years plus have still not been deployed, even though that the effect can't be discussed and they're readily available. So what we also try, at least from your perspective, is to move more owners from this bucket of first movers, fast followers, and then the passives. So move them up the ladder and say that some of the passives should become the first followers or the fast followers quite early on, because there are technologies out there which has been around for many years now, which are indebatable in terms of the effects, right?
I can also add that when we talk about these new technologies and even future fuels, it is super important to have reduced your consumption base already. Frederick mentioned the energy density is much lower on the new fuels. If you apply the rotor sails or air application, you need additional power. If you have already opened up for that power by reducing the load, it's a win-win.
The question is, what is the best technology to install?
Yeah, we get that a lot. And the best technology is the right combination of technologies. There are obviously some technologies that have a higher impact, but as Frederick mentioned before, it is really valuable to combine technologies, LEDs, VFDs, and anti-fouling systems, and because the summation of this is an average attract payback time and higher reduction potential. So there's no straight answer to that one.
We're going to be wrapping this up here. If you are curious about getting started today, there is a quick and easy way to assess the number of technologies, CII improvement, payback period, and the business case behind starting your journey. We've created an online tool that will help you do just that, and it is free of charge. And the link is now available in the chat. So please go ahead and click to start your journey there. Otherwise, thank you so much for dialing in. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend with us. And we sincerely hope you'll join us for the next live event, which will be announced shortly. Thanks very much.